They say the countryside is peaceful, quiet, safe. But sometimes it's too quiet. The kind of quiet where the birds stop singing, where your phone loses signal, where roads vanish behind fog, and strangers wave from places no one lives anymore. Out there, in the forgotten corners of the world, people disappear, and the land remembers. Here are 3 true stories from deep in the countryside, where the trees have eyes, and the silence hides screams. Story 1. The Lantern in the Pines. Elliot had never believed in superstitions. He was 28, had grown up in the city, and thought rural people just invented ghost stories to cope with boredom. So when his company offered a remote field survey assignment deep in the Appalachian countryside, he accepted without hesitation. His task was simple: spend 5 nights in an old, unused forestry cabin, mapping terrain data for a government logging project. It was isolated, sure, but equipped with solar power, basic heating, and even Wi-Fi. Though it barely worked unless you stood outside near the trail. The first day passed uneventfully. The cabin creaked from time to time, but Elliot wrote it off as old wood settling. That night, he slept early. At 2:47 a.m., he was woken by something tapping on the window. Not a knock, not a branch in the wind, but tapping, deliberate, rhythmic. He sat up, heart pounding. The window was beside his bed, and with the moonlight filtering through, he saw nothing. Just empty woods. But when he pulled the curtain aside, he saw it. A faint orange light flickering about 50 feet into the pines, like a lantern, swaying slightly, moving side to side. It was old-fashioned, dim, yellowish, almost like a flame instead of LED. Who the hell used a lantern out here? He went outside with a flashlight and called out, thinking maybe a lost hiker had wandered close, but the light disappeared the moment his boot touched the dirt. He stood for 5 minutes in silence, hearing only his own breath, then turned round and the cabin door was open. He swore he'd closed it, locked it. He always did. Inside, everything looked the same. Nothing moved, nothing stolen, no signs of forced entry. Except the map he was drawing had a muddy thumbprint across the page. Fresh, smudged, and he was certain he hadn't touched it. The next day, he checked for footprints. Nothing. Just old pine needles undisturbed. That night, it happened again. The tapping. This time from the back wall, which had no windows, just thick, solid logs. Then footsteps. Slow, pacing footsteps along the roof. He screamed and ran outside, but the roof was empty. No ladders. No trees close enough to climb. No animals, just silence, and the same orange light in the woods. Only now, it was closer. On the 3rd night, he set up a trail camera. Nothing was captured, just fog, a squirrel, then static, as if something had interfered with the signal. The 4th night, he didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., he heard whispering through the cabin walls. Male and female voices speaking in some dialect he didn't understand. It sounded almost Gaelic, old, ancient. Then the door handle turned, slowly. Elliot held his breath. He had locked it, double-bolted. The handle turned again, then stopped. From the window, the lantern light flickered just beyond the tree line, and this time, something stepped into view. A tall, impossibly thin figure wearing what looked like colonial-era clothing. Its face wasn't visible, but its eyes, 2 glowing red dots, locked directly on him. He blinked. It vanished. He ran out that morning without packing. Left everything, sprinting 2 miles to where his truck was parked. The engine didn't start at first. Took 4 tries. As he drove, the same lantern light flickered in his rearview mirror, keeping pace with the vehicle for several seconds, then fading into the trees. Elliot never spoke about what happened publicly, but a few months later, a local forestry worker found his abandoned map. It had been pinned to the cabin wall with an old rusted nail. And on the map, drawn in childlike handwriting, were 3 words: You saw us. Story 2. The Whisper Fields. Mira had inherited the farmhouse from an uncle she barely remembered. It stood alone on 10 acres of wind-blown fields in northern Kansas, the kind of place where you could scream and no one would hear it for miles. She wasn't planning to stay long, just clean up the property, get it valued, and put it on the market. But the first time she stepped inside, she felt it. Not fear, not at first, just a weight, as if the house had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled when she entered. The interior was dusty but untouched, furniture still in place, pictures on the wall, everything frozen in time. Her uncle's boots still sat by the door. She noticed something odd. All the mirrors in the house had been either removed or covered in sheets. She found 4 hidden behind curtains, each one draped as if to keep something in. The basement door was bolted shut from the outside. She figured it was just an old farmhouse quirk. Nothing to worry about. That night the wind picked up. Fields outside hissed like whispers, long and low, as if the grass itself was murmuring. When she tried to sleep, she heard thumps in the walls. Not rats. Something larger, moving slowly. At 2:13 a.m., she was woken by a whisper right beside her ear. "You're not supposed to be here." She jolted upright. No one was there. The room was cold. The sheets were damp with sweat. The next day, she found a journal tucked under a floorboard in the living room. It belonged to her uncle. The last entry was written 2 weeks before his death. "I told them I wouldn't look, but sometimes they call anyway. The field knows when you're awake." She thought it was the ramblings of an old man losing his mind. But that night, the field spoke. It didn't just whisper this time. It called her name. Mira. Soft, like a lullaby, carried on the wind. She stood by the window and saw something moving in the grass. Not walking, not crawling, slithering. She shut the curtains and locked the door. Every light in the house flickered. Her phone stopped working. The clocks froze at 2:13 a.m. The mirror in the hallway, the one she hadn't found before, had been uncovered, and inside it, she saw a reflection that wasn't hers. A woman stood behind her in the glass, pale, with hollow eyes, and a mouth stretched unnaturally wide. Mira spun around. The hallway was empty, but the reflection stayed, still staring, still smiling. She covered the mirror and ran to the basement door. Something told her she needed to see what was down there. She pried off the bolt and went down. The walls were covered in scratched words, dozens of them. The same phrase, written over and over again. "Don't listen to the field." And in the center of the basement was a large hand-dug hole. It stank of rot. She leaned over and saw something move, just a glimpse, before a gust of wind slammed the basement door shut above her. She was locked in darkness for nearly an hour. No signal, no sounds, just breathing that wasn't hers. When she finally forced the door open and escaped, she didn't stay. She got in her car and drove through the night, not stopping until she reached a gas station 6 towns away. When she returned with police the next morning, the hole in the basement was gone, filled in, as if it had never existed. The scratchings on the walls were painted over, but the mirror now reflected only a black void where her face should have been. The house was sold 3 months later. The new owners didn't stay more than a week. And no matter what time it is, if you listen closely, the wind in those fields still whispers her name. Story 3. The House That Waited. Jacob and Lisa were newlyweds searching for the perfect countryside escape. They dreamed of quiet mornings, fresh air, and a break from the chaos of city life. When they found the farmhouse listing online, it felt almost too good to be true. An old Victorian home nestled at the edge of a forgotten hamlet in rural Maine. The pictures showed blooming trees, a wraparound porch, and a view of misty hills that looked like something from a postcard. The listing price was suspiciously low, but the seller claimed it had been in the family for generations and they simply wanted it off their hands. They moved in during spring. The house was exactly as described. Beautiful, quiet, almost too quiet. No traffic sounds, no neighbors, just trees, hills, fog. The first strange thing happened on their second morning. The front door was wide open. Jacob swore he'd locked it. Lisa assumed he forgot, but the lock was still turned from the inside. Over the next few days, small things went missing. A single shoe, a coffee mug. The bathroom mirror's reflection lagged by a half second. Lisa would wake at night to the sound of music, old jazz coming faintly from somewhere below the house. But there was no basement, just a sealed hatch in the floor of the pantry, nailed shut. Then came the writing. On the third week, Jacob found it scratched faintly into the inside of their bedroom closet. "It's not abandoned if something waits." They laughed it off. A prank. Maybe local kids messing with the house before they bought it, until they saw the photographs. Lisa was organizing boxes in the attic when she found an old photo album tucked into a drawer. Every page showed families who had once lived in the house, black and white photos from decades past. Each image had names written neatly beneath: the Holloways, the Kenters, the Mabrys. But in every photo, no matter the decade, one figure remained the same, standing just outside the window in the background. A tall woman in black, wearing a veil. Lisa didn't say anything to Jacob at first, but that night, she heard him whisper, in his sleep, "She's outside the window." She woke him. He didn't remember the dream, but the next night she saw her, just past the tree line, unmoving, watching the woman in black. Lisa tried to leave the next day, but their car wouldn't start. The road out was washed over with mud from a sudden rainstorm. It hadn't rained in the forecast. The power went out that night, and the music came back, louder, closer. They pried open the hatch in the pantry. Jacob went first. The staircase led deep beneath the house, far deeper than the home should allow. At the bottom was a single room lit by old oil lanterns, and on the walls dozens of photographs, all the same woman, the veiled figure. One picture stood out, a grainy image of Lisa and Jacob standing in the house. Yesterday. Neither remembered taking it. Lisa turned to ask Jacob something, but he was gone. Vanished. She ran upstairs screaming, but the house had changed. The hallway was longer, the windows were bricked over, doors wouldn't open, and the music was coming from inside the walls. She saw herself in the mirror, not her reflection. Herself standing there, eyes wide, mouth open, as if screaming. And behind her, the woman. Lisa woke up outside, alone, face down in the wet grass. It was morning. The house stood silently behind her, door swinging gently in the breeze. Jacob was never found. Authorities claimed he ran off, that she had a psychotic break. But Lisa knows the truth. The house didn't want both of them. It wanted one. She had read that line scratched inside the closet again and again. Only now she understood. It's not abandoned if something waits. And something always waits. Especially in places no one remembers anymore. Some stories end with answers, but the scariest ones, they just stop. Like footsteps that never echo, or voices in the night that never call your name, until they do. If you made it this far, sleep with the lights on tonight. And remember, if you love true horror stories based on real events, dark folklore, and things most people are too afraid to talk about, subscribe to our channel now, because next time, the story might be yours.